Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work. They're filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
The Nazis came. That's when everything changed very, very quickly and very, very badly.
All Jews have to report to the French police and get the Star of David.
When light the candle Shabbos night, we had to pull down the blinds so nobody see that we're Jewish.
They shipped us to Siberia. It was cold. We did not have any food.
98% of the Jews of Łódź disappeared under the worst inhumane condition that you can imagine.
Rather than focus solely on the tragedy, on the suffering, on the destruction, and on the questions, we've chosen to focus on heroes and the chizuk that we receive from these heroic men, from these heroic women who somehow not only survived, but thrived, but rebuilt, is a lesson that stays with us, that stays with our students for a lifetime.
It was probably one of the most horrific things to ever happen to the Jews. A lot of the Jews really pushed through it, they made their way out of it, and it should be something to remember.
It's a great privilege because not a lot of people survived the Holocaust, and to have still survivors that are here with us at ASHAR is very special.
It's just like not every day you get a chance to meet survivors and learn what they were through.
A chance to do what my grandfather always wanted me to do. He always wanted me to learn about the Holocaust. He always wanted me to know about it and acknowledge it.
If you fail to learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. So if we don't pay attention and learn from what happened 80 years ago, then the same thing can happen today.
You have to teach the younger generations about what happened and pass it on so people don't forget it and it just gets lost in history. If we forget what happened, it could happen again.
We should learn about it and not make the same mistake.
I had a great-grandfather who survived the Holocaust and I never got to meet him, so I think this whole experience can help me understand what my family has been through.
My great-grandmother was in Auschwitz.
My great-grandma was in the Holocaust.
My great-grandpa was in Ukraine when the Nazis invaded. That definitely makes me feel more involved in the whole Names Not Numbers project.
It makes me feel a little that I'm getting to know my great-grandfather a little more, even though I never met him.
My great-grandmother and great-uncle were in the Holocaust, and I think a project like this will definitely honor what they went through by just putting more about it out there.
31% of all Americans believe that 2 million or fewer Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Among young Americans, 66% of them could not identify Auschwitz as a concentration or death camp.
It's something so terrible that happened to the Jews, and it's unforgettable. Like, if someone says it never happened, I would totally disagree with them, and I would literally start screaming at them. Because I have family who is in the Holocaust, and you could never take that experience away from them.
There are still people like today that deny the Holocaust and say it never happened.
They have no facts. They have no reason to think that, because all these different proof that the Holocaust did happen.
We do the Names Not Numbers program to show that this did happen as proof.
To make sure that no one denies it, and to make sure we learn from our mistakes and this doesn't happen again.
You are the last generation that has the privilege to hear the survivors' testimonies firsthand. It is through your interview that we will be combating anti-Semitism, all forms of intolerance. It'll be the survivors and you that are telling the story for the world to hear and for the world to learn. The Names Not Numbers students are learning history, recording history, and preserving history through your work.
This is the last generation that we could hear face-to-face from an actual survivor.
Eventually, when the survivors are all gone, it's up to us to say the story and learn about it, and it just means a lot to me.
When we arrived to Auschwitz,
On opening night, they showed us older ASHAR students videos of NNN. It was very moving. I'm nervous about the stories that I'm gonna hear, how I'm gonna be able to handle them, how they're gonna come through to me, or if the person I'm interviewing is going to be comfortable telling them to me.
Their name didn't matter, their personality didn't matter, they were just a number. So Names Not Numbers shows that they were more than just a number.
We're not just numbers, we're human beings.
We're trying to learn about that person behind the number.
Well, the number is stealing an identity away from somebody that has been given to them from birth.
We don't want them to just go down in history as being survivors, to think of them as being fighters and real warriors instead of feeling bad for them and really sharing their story.
We should always learn about it, so even in the future, everyone will never forget it. They'll always know that the Holocaust did happen and it's a real thing.
And it's coming up now, October 7th, so I feel like you really have to keep it alive.
I'm hoping to share it to the world, because a lot of people need to understand what really happened. When you watch a video of a real survivor, it's harder to not believe or to just think it didn't really happen, because they're the real survivor.
A journalist came in and taught us how to do interviews.
What are the most important techniques, you think, interviewing techniques that you're going to need as you do this interview? What's important? Go ahead. Being polite, good. Eye contact, good.
I think eye contact is important because I feel like you can really connect better.
Good posture.
Not to interrupt any of what they have to say.
Making the person you're interviewing feel comfortable.
If someone got emotional, just kind of be understanding, just kind of nod or give them a tissue.
It's very important to make them feel as comfortable as possible to fully open up about their experience in the Holocaust.
When you ask yes and no questions, that's where the conversation ends, right? What happened to you during the war? That's an open-ended question. You can answer that in long form.
He taught us that we weren't supposed to ask any yes or no questions.
Always ask open-ended questions so that the conversation does not end.
How to really have a conversation and not give yes or no question, the really open-ended question that could lead to stories.
It was different living in the concentration camps and living out here in the regular world.
We had a mock interview with Mr. Zoldan, and he told us how to interview and not to say and don't be laughing and straight face and what to say pretty much so we don't mess it up.
It was a very traumatic experience running for our lives.
It was a new experience because I'd never been interviewed before. Even though it was a mock interview, it was still interesting.
Asking the questions, you have to really think before you speak. It was honestly kind of
hard at first, and then it got easier and easier, and it felt more comfortable to do it.
We were shown how to use the cameras.
These two are going to be on the Survivor. This is kind of like a wider one, you can see, wider shot. You all will be on that camera filming each other, interviewing.
We learned how to focus on the person and how to zoom in and out.
I learned the style of what some documentaries are like, how different camera angles affect the viewer's perspective.
We learned how to like zoom in, zoom out, make it blurry, unblurry, and like how to move it up and down. And there shouldn't be like too much room above them or too much room like below them.
Where to place the subject. If you like place it so that there's more space like in front of them, then it would look more like they're talking like towards somewhere.
If someone's looking this way, we would like to put the camera more to their face here so they have an open view of what they're looking at.
They showed us how to zoom in, focus, how to get a good angle of them. It was a lot of fun.
One thing that I learned is one of the focuses makes people like have like red on them to show that they're in focus.
And also monitor the voice and the recording and audio.
Make sure the mics were working, which was really fun to learn.
I've never used the camera before that.
It was interesting to learn how to use them.
To prepare for the interview, we first read a book called 4 Perfect Pebbles, and then we made a timeline.
The timeline's about key events that happened during the Holocaust.
Our teachers prepared a doc with bios.
We made a bunch of questions from before the war, in the war, and after the war.
We got a lot of background on him, so we could write down our questions and write down notes on his background.
I'll be interviewing my great-grandfather, Moshe Koenig.
Miriam Edelstein.
Mr. Morris Engelson.
Rebecca Konigsberg.
Mr. George Lindenblatt.
I am interviewing Mr. Simon Kahan.
Right before the interview, I was a little nervous, but I was also excited to really hear her story.
A little scared, also a little excited, because I've been waiting to do this since like 5th grade.
Before the interview, I was a little bit nervous because I've never done something like this before. Unfortunately, like, we're one of the last classes to be able to do such a thing, so I'm like excited for the opportunity.
The week before, I was like nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Today, when I walked down the hallway and I saw him, I shook his hand and I instantly felt more confident in myself.
I'm trying to expect the unexpected because the person I'm interviewing has never spoke up on it, so I don't know if he's going to be comfortable with all the questions.
I'm a little nervous because, like, I don't know, it's a big project and like there's cameras and stuff, but I think I'm going to do good.
Seeing someone live talking about it makes a bigger impression than just a video or a book.
I think my great-grandfather agreed to be interviewed, mostly because he's getting older, unfortunately, and he realized that the next generation needs to know what happened.
My name is Rebecca Konigsberg. I was born in Poland, in a small little town called Loszica, not far from Warsaw.
Miriam Edelstein. When I was born, it was Mira Bachtel in a small town called Rudnik in Poland.
Moshe Koenig, 1930, a city of Łódź. They call it here Lodz in Poland.
My name is Morris Engelson. I was born in a very small town northeast of the city of Vilnius, which is now the capital of Lithuania.
My name is Simon Kahan. I was born in Paris, France, in 1931.
George Lindenblatt. I was born in Budapest, Hungary, 1938.
It was my father and my mother and myself. My father was a butcher and my mother had some kind of a store, like all kinds of stuff to buy with her mother. I only spoke Jewish. We were always together, as much as I remember as a child. We lived by my grandmother. We did not have any house for ourselves. In the summer, my parents rented an orchard from apples, and we were there during the whole summer.
My father was a very wealthy man compared to everybody else. In my town, at least 40% were Jewish, except for the maid and the people who worked for my father. Everybody was Jewish. I had a brother who was born before me, and he died before me. 6 weeks of age, he got roseola. And because my brother died so suddenly, and I was probably her last try at having children, she was absolutely nutty about me. I had no friends my age, really, and I was sick most of the time that I remember. I had something called pseudo-croup. It was basically croup, where I couldn't breathe and there's no central heating. What I remember most is saying, pick me up and bundle me up, because you have to bundle you up because there's no heat. My family was kosher and observant. We always ate in the dining room and the maid served. I remember that they sent me to a school. It was a Jewish school. My favorite companion was my uncle, who was my mother's younger brother. He was like her baby that she took care of.
There was an industrial city, fairly new, and they made textiles. The whole city has a population of approximately 600,000.
What did your father do for work growing up?
He was in textiles. There were no yeshivas to speak of. They had like private teachers organized, but there was no school, not Beis Medrash, no yeshivas. I went to a school that was organized that year. Till then, there was no school like Polish and Jewish. That was something new. We enough rich to send me to schools, to a school like this, which wasn't cheap.
There were no roads, not even gravel, no indoor plumbing. We used to have to go to a well to get water. Very small place, about 900 Jews. In Yiddish, it would be called a shtetl. We are a family of 4, a mother and a father, an older brother, almost 6 years older than I am. I didn't go to any school because I was too young. Going around and causing mischief, that was my hobby. Very happy place for kids. Kids would run around all over the place. We had a river very close to us. The Jews kind of kept to themselves. We had our own shuls, we had our own rabbi, we had our own everything. It was like a little kehillah, like a little congregation, and I was not treated any differently from anybody else as far as I know.
At that time, France was peaceful. My parents had a factory in Paris. They did ladies' hats. The big apartment that we had was 25 Boulevard de Sébastopol. It was a Jewish area. It was in the old quarter of Paris. My parents did very well because they were shipping ladies' hats all over French Morocco. I went to a public school. It was all boys at the time. And my father was not too religious. He was born in Paris in France. He was a Frenchman. But my mother, coming from Poland, was very religious. And she would follow all the holidays. She would go to the shul, to the synagogue by herself.
Before the war, my parents were well-to-do people and we had a nanny. My father had a store selling eggs and dairy product. I have 3 brothers.
We were holding Shabbat, but we were modern, religious.
Everybody used to bring a pot of chun to the bakery. For Shabbos meals, everybody, the help, or they went to the bakery after davening and take the pot of chun with it.
I was the one who took the cholent to the bakery on Friday afternoon. So we have cholent for the next day because we didn't cook. So next morning, after coming out of the shul, I went and picked up the cholent. And that was our best meal.
All I remember about Pesach, I was going back from the bakery of my grandfather, carrying the matzahs. Sometimes we stayed over in their house. At night, he's sitting learning.
How did Shabbos change when the war broke out?
When light the candle Shabbos night, we had to pull down the blinds so nobody see that we're Jewish. We couldn't go to synagogue. There was no synagogue allowed to be gone.
There were a lot of restrictions. For example, Jews could not own farms. So all the Jews had to live in town.
Growing up, walking the street, had to walk with somebody because any gent-like kid was walked through and either hit me or pushed me.
In June 22nd, 1941, Germany attacked Russia. That's when everything changed very, very quickly and very, very badly. I was just a little kid and I didn't know anything bad was happening until the Nazis came.
It was on the radio. My father made an announcement that when the Germans reach Krakow, we leave. It was a matter of days. Everybody was hysterical and they didn't know what to pack. When we finally left, my mother got down on her knees and kissed the doorstep, like she was kissing the house goodbye, because she was never going to see it again. And she never saw it again. And that was it. Nobody had cars. So we left in these horse-drawn carriages. And the wagon in front of us was my uncle and his wife, and they had a brand new baby that was 6 weeks old. And as the wagons were moving along, a German plane flew overhead and started throwing bombs. At this point, I had been asleep. My parents assumed my aunt and uncle were taking care of me, but it happened so suddenly. They grabbed their baby and ran. The horses ran because they got spooked. And when I woke up, there was nobody there. The cart was turned upside down and I was on the ground and the bombs were falling and I was just kicking and screaming. And to say that I was terrified is minimizing the whole thing. It was the most horrible thing. They tell me it only took a half hour. Some men came back and they lifted the wagon and they pulled me out from there. But it seemed like an eternity. That was my introduction to the war. We went to a small town further east called Bilgorai, and we lived with a family there, and we stayed there, I don't know, maybe a week or 2 or 3. That part of Poland was occupied by Germany already, and the Germans were nice people at the time. The soldiers were just regular guys. The landlady invited them for Friday night dinner, and they showed pictures of the family. Everybody got along very nicely. This was before the concentration camp business started. Every time there was a bomb attack, we would run out of the house and hit the ground. And my mother had a requirement that I had to put my face down first, and then my father and her head would go on top. So if there was a direct hit, I would live a fraction of a second longer than she did.
The war broke in 1939. When we came that year from the orchard into the town, the war started, and planes came to want to shoot us. So my father grabbed me out from the little wagon with the 2 horses, and we ran. They were firing, and you threw me down on the floor. When the planes went away, my father was holding me in his hands, and we started looking for my mother. But my mother was in a small little, where they keep the horses and the cows. Her sister, not far from her, got killed. It got dark. It was an open field. And that's what we stayed during the night. My father decided that he does not want to be in Poland anymore. So we ran away. I don't know the name of the place that we stayed there for a couple of days. We got a knock at the door, and that was Russians said that you're coming with us. We did not know we're going to Russia.
The first motorcycle with German soldiers that they just entered the city, and somebody behind me mentioned that it's not going to be school this week, and I was so happy. Till the day that the Germans put us, they said ghetto was a very hard prison. No food, no freedom. They started taking away children from their families and sending them away. They didn't know in the beginning where they're sending them. They worked hard. They didn't have heat winter. They didn't have food. 98% of the Jews of Łódź disappeared under the worst inhumane condition that you can imagine.
In 1939, they invaded France. To escape street fighting in Paris, a friend of mine had a van, and we all went into the van and we went south. After a day on the road, we couldn't go any further. Nobody could travel anymore. Everything came to a standstill. We spent the night in a van, and then the next day, the German caught up with us. At that time, they didn't seem so terrible. They gave us food and gasoline, and they told us go back to Paris. So we went back. All the schools were closed. The German passed new laws. All Jews have to report to the French police and get the Star of David. You could be outside like shopping from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. After that, you cannot be in the street. If they catch you in the street after the curfew, most likely you would disappear. You went to a concentration camp. The foreign Jews were disappearing overnight. My mother figured the French Jews will be next. We left Paris and we went to the countryside in a small village. My aunt used to go on vacation in that area, so she knew the people who would take on tenants. I was placed with a family as a tenant, and my mother and my aunt rented an apartment in a different village. My older cousin, André, and my uncle, they worked in different farms in different little village in the area. You know, we were like maybe 4 or 5 miles from each other. We had to be careful not to be together.
They put the Jews into a ghetto. Everybody was squeezed together, basically a family to a room. We were supposed to stay inside this little place. They gave us two little streets. The Jews were not allowed to have any businesses, and they were not allowed to do any work, so there was no income. And we had to wear the yellow star. This was a very peculiar ghetto, because a real one would have walls and guards. We didn't have any walls and we didn't have any guards, and that was because it wasn't supposed to be around for very long, because they were going to come and kill us soon. They took the men away to do all kinds of work on the roads, but there was no income. People started selling or giving away all their possessions to the Polish neighbors in order to get food. So life was very difficult.
1944, when the Nazis came into Hungary, they were the Hungarian Nazis. They were worse than the Germans. When they came in marching, we watched from the window and they were saluting. So we did the same as we were kids. And my mother says, get away from the window. Anybody who was over 6 years old had to wear a Star of David. I had my Star of David. My brother had all that one. He had it on. My mother says, you put it in your pocket. Don't show that you're Jewish. Don't put it on. It's enough that one has it. So I had mine in my pocket. Once in a while I put it on. I felt proud being wearing a Jewish star. I had a brother who was very lucky because he was blonde like a German. And we had a nanny who went out with him because they knew that he didn't look like Jewish people to be able to go shop some food. Many times we were hungry, and only time we were able to get some food when the non-Jewish people finished going out to shop, then the Jews were allowed to go out to shop. You couldn't go to school, you couldn't get food, you had to hide your identity, you have to run from one place to another to escape from them.
Stalin and Hitler had an agreement, non-aggression act, but eventually Hitler broke the agreement and he started advancing against the Soviet Union. After Belgorod, we moved east. My father felt safer going east, away from the Germans. The next thing I remember was a bombed out house. There was no upstairs, no nothing. It was just a cellar. And the only thing food-wise that was in the house was a barrel of pickles. And it was my parents and I and my aunt and uncle and their baby and a couple of other families. And that's all we had to eat was pickles. We couldn't stay there for too long. So we kept going east. And we left in the middle of the night. We got separated from my uncle at this point. My father would, in the dark, dig a hole in the ground, stick me and my mother in the ground, and go foraging in the field for something to eat. We ate it raw, potatoes, carrots, anything he came back with. Every other night we would be in another hole until we arrived in Lvov. We stayed there for a year and a half. It was a modern building with indoor plumbing. We lived with a family. They gave us one room of their apartment. As the Russians were retreating, they wanted all the people there to declare Soviet citizenship. Those who didn't got deported to Siberia as enemies of the state. My father said, we're not declaring Soviet citizenship, they're barbarians. We're going to stay here and wait for the nice, civilized Germans. So they shipped us to Siberia. Because of that, I'm alive today.
We had to go on a boat. We were like 10 people, and they were afraid of me because I was the only child, that I will cry. So my father opened up his jacket and he put me in there and he buttoned me up. So I was there by my father. I did not cry. And we wound up in a train station and we went on a train to Russia. My mother brought along her sister. My mother had 8 sisters and 1 brother. Nobody wanted to go. We found out later that they made a ghetto and they stayed there, and the ghetto was Treblinka, and they all got killed. We stayed in Sibir. My father was working for the government. He was knocking down trees and all that stuff. It was cold, and my aunt wrapped me around. I did not have a coat, and they gave me some, the boots are not like boots, but they're like Uggs. We did not have any food. You eat what you can, and you look for food, and if you have money, we had some clothes that we sold.
In the beginning of '44, they sent me out to concentration camp, and I didn't know where they're sending up my family. By cattle train, that was the mode of transportation. They stuffed them as many as they could. It was packed that you couldn't breathe anymore, then they locked you up, and nobody knew where anybody else was going. Either people's mind couldn't comprehend, believe that something like this is possible, or they have hope, I don't know. Maybe I was too young to understand. We were the last train probably of the ghetto. We came to Auschwitz, and that was the end of the road. But what happened, a train was supposed to go to build up the camp that I was in, and they were very particular. They needed 10,000 people, and about 15 people were missing. So they grabbed 15 people from Łódź and one Hungarian, and they took us on the train to get out of the ghetto. If it wasn't for that, I would have stayed in Auschwitz. I wouldn't have gone to any working camps.
One time, most likely my uncle was visiting his wife, who was with my mother in that apartment, and somebody called the French police and they asked them for their ID paper, their false ID cards. My aunt, under the pressure, told the French police that we are Jews and we escaped from the German. Our husbands are prisoners of war in Germany, and we have no place to go. So the French police said, okay, we have to burn your ID papers because it's against the law. Stay here, there's no place for you to go. Stay here. Those French police people were actually righteous Gentiles because they could have called the Gestapo, the German police, and everybody would have been dead by now. My father was driving an ambulance in the French army, and he was located in the south of France. When the Germans came in, France capitulated. The French army was dismissed. So my father became a civilian, and he stayed in the south of France. France was divided into two parts. The Vichy government was in southern France. There were no German. I don't know what he was doing there, but it was safe.
They started killing the Jews by sending out killing squads. They were called Einsatzgruppen. They would come in, take the Jews to a nearby forest, and they would kill everybody. One of the people who was in charge of various police functions in the area had a good friend who was a Jew. And when he found out that they were coming to take us to a forest, he told his Jewish friend, and his Jewish friend then told everybody else. Most Jews didn't believe that it was true. Why would they kill everybody when they had these free workers? So very few people tried to escape. My father thought, I'll stay back and see what happens. But my wife and my children need to go and hide someplace. My mother, my brother and I would take off our yellow stars, we go out of the ghetto, and we go to the nearest farm, and we asked to stay there overnight. If the killers came, he was sure he could escape by himself, and he would come that Friday night and take us away, and we'll hide someplace. And if they didn't come, he would come there Friday night and take us back to the ghetto. So we went out, we went to the farm. The farm woman didn't want her to stay because it was very dangerous. She said, if they catch us, they'll kill everybody, including her. And finally, the farm woman said that we could go into the barn. Friday night, Father did not come. Saturday morning, Father did not come. And we thought Father must be dead. And then a man with a gun came. He was looking for Jews because some Jews escaped. And the farm woman said, I don't have anything to do with Jews. He said, I'll go look in the barn. Maybe somebody came in at night while you weren't looking. She was very brave, so she said, you must be tired. He says, yes, I'm very tired. Why don't you come into the house and I will give you breakfast? And she said to her son, go in the barn and get him out of the barn. We went out of the barn, we're running across the clearing, and then he turns around and looks through the window and he sees us. So he takes his gun and he runs out, but we managed to run into a nearby forest. And he was running after us and still shooting at us. We lost him in the forest. Eventually we came out and there's some people there, there's a village. We met a man who said he'll take us wherever we want to go. And this man was a local smuggler. My mother decided that she wanted to go to a city in Belarus because she had a sister there, and she thought maybe they're killing the Jews here, but they're not killing the Jews in some other country.
We stayed in a protective house. I don't know if any of you heard of a fellow named Karl Lutz. He saved 60,000 Hungarian Jews. He was a Swiss ambassador, and he gave us called a Schusspass, which said that you're under the protection of the Swiss government. So my mother was able to get that. We went from one house to another, went into ambulances. So this way they wouldn't touch the ambulance, so we were able to move, get away from the Nazis. Then we went to called a glass house, where I slept on the glass.
Were you separated from your family at all?
My father was in a labor camp, but my mother always kept us together. Sometimes he was able to come out of the labor camp and come home, come back to see us, but very seldom. Also, my mother was a very good protector. She was a tough woman. And we also had a nanny who carried a gun, a nice Jewish girl.
We left in freight cars, which were sealed. There were no bathroom facilities inside, just a bucket for everybody in the car. Once a day at midnight, they would open the doors to give us a chance to empty the bucket, and they had some kind of mystery soup. Nobody cared what was in it as long as it was hot. The only thing we had for entertainment is to pick lice off each other. That's what we did for a whole month. And then they deposited us into something that looked like a desert, only it wasn't sand, it was snow. Horse-drawn sleighs came and brought us to a schoolhouse. My father built the furniture. He even made the dishes out of tin cans. In no time at all, the log cabin was infested with cockroaches and bed bugs because it was warm. The government supplied bread. The bread was very heavy and very dark, and I suspect it was laced with sawdust. My father had traded a few things, so we ended up with a goat. As the weather got warmer, he traded a watch for a pig. We didn't worry about being kosher at that time. It was just food. Then we had chickens, and we had eggs, so we weren't starving. But it was cold. My father lost a toe to frostbite. My mother would help me learn how to sew. I mended socks. I sewed doll clothes. We played school. We had brown packing paper, which we cut up and made into notebooks. I went to the first grade in the Soviet Union. It was hard. You have to sit in your seat like this with your hands behind you. If you want to talk, you raise your hand. And when you talk to a teacher, you stand up. I stayed in the orphanage for at least a year, only because my parents thought I'd get better food there. And the kids were very jealous that I had parents who could occasionally bring me a sandwich. Of course there were lice. Everybody's head got shaved, but because I had parents who had a little pull, they left me a little bang. So if I wore a scarf, it looked like I had hair. And of course the girls were very jealous of that and then resented me. I told my parents, I don't care if I starve with you, but I don't want to be in this place anymore.
They took us to the warmer climates, to Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and the place was ASHAR. The Muslim, they're very nice. I had a lot of Muslim friends who were playing with me, who made me little braids, and we even learned how to cook. They opened up a school for us children who are Polish born. My parents worked the whole day for one pita bread. During the day I didn't want to eat anything, but at night I was crying for food. So my parents saved this. For me, they knew that I will want some food. And that's how we lived. They learned the trade, and they did it illegally. My mother was like in a bazaar, like a flea market. My father became a shoemaker. When I went to school, my mother gave me 15 rubles, and she told me, buy yourself a soup. I did not buy a soup, I bought myself a hat. And my mother says, I wanted you to buy a soup, but I like that hat very nice.
Starvation isn't the word for it. You lied on the cement floor. In barracks, like, the sun shone during the day, melted the snow, and the water used to drip on the bunks. And at night, the blanket froze up. When I say blanket, you think it was a blanket, something, a cover. It was a stick of ice. People were covered with ice. And the fun of the Germans was they used to pick someone and take him outside with a whip, and they started counting the lice. I didn't remember working in a forest in sub-zero temperatures and being cold with nothing on except the pajamas. I had assigned the German soldiers because since I was the smallest and I gave my age very high, so something physically wrong with me, so they gave me the job lunchtime. Everybody got the little warm water, and I was distributing, and he had to go with me to watch me that I shouldn't escape. I remember him dressed, 2-3 overcoats, socks, heavy boots, sweaters under the helmet, after a good night's sleep, after breakfast, going back to lunch. And he says, first I'm freezing, and I don't remember being cold. They distributed the water and whatever has to be. But I had the best job, that's for sure. Because the next best job was to chop out the trees from there to build fortresses and things like that. And I didn't have to do that physical part that people just dropped.
I went to school over there in that little village. Children, they didn't know who I was. When my back was turned, they would call Jew, Jew, Jew. So I felt very bad, you know. But after a while, since I was better educated than they were, I helped them out with their homework, and we became best friends. As a child, you know, I was 10, 11 years old. I took chances, had friends. We used to go to the movie, which we were not allowed to do. We would go outside after the curfew. We have to remove Star of David. All those things were against the law. But as children, we had no ID cards, we had no ID papers. The German didn't look after the children, but it was dangerous. When I was 12, 13, 14, I was learning to be a tailor, to make men's suits. And people were disappearing, going to Germany, supposedly to work. So I was saying as a child, if we have to work we work here, so we'll work in Germany instead. We didn't realize that working in Germany is working in concentration camp and dying. We found out about concentration camp after the war.
The smuggler took us to this place in Belarus. We walked only at night, and we didn't walk on any roads. We walked only in the forests, and it was very, very dark. My mother had to pay him, and the way she paid him was with her jewelry. I think it was two or three weeks of slow walking through this forest. We got to the place in Belarus, and over there was a real ghetto. It had real walls, and it had guards, and there were thousands of Jews. We went into this ghetto. My mother had a job, and my brother had a job. So they were able to get food for themselves, and they shared the food with me. So all three of us ate the food. We were always hungry, but being hungry is not the same as starving. We have to go back to see what happened to my father. So my father fought with the men that caught him, and he was able to get away. Shabbos, midday, he's alone in the ghetto. He is alive, and everybody else is dead. It's a miracle. And he went to the woman. The woman says, well, a man with a gun came here this morning. He shot him. They're dead. I saw the man with the gun go after him in the forest, and I heard the shots. So he started walking. And he walks to the farm, of his boyhood friend. His name was Adam Sienkiewicz. They invented a Polish name for my father, and they will pretend that my father was a cousin to Adam. My father is thinking, he survived by a miracle, maybe we survived also. The woman heard the shots in the forest, but she didn't see us get killed. So he keeps telling Adam, you have to go look and search and check to see if my wife and children survived. So they made up a big list of all the places where Adam will go searching for us. And finally, he finds my mother, and it's a big celebration for us because it means that my father is alive. We thought he was dead. And he tells my mother, you don't know it, but they're killing the Jews all around you in Belarus. And pretty soon they're going to come and kill you too. We have to get you out of here. So we'll come here with horse-drawn wagons. So be ready to come out as soon as we send somebody for you. My mother and my brother had documents to permit them to come and go into the ghetto and out of the ghetto because they were working. I didn't have any papers, but my mother prepared some forged papers. The guard took a look at the papers and he let us go through. Nobody stopped us, and we managed to get back. Very big celebration. We're now reunited with my father, and the whole family is together again. If we got out later, maybe 5 minutes at the most, we could not get out, and I would have been taken away by the children's action. That's the difference between life and death.
We were in a protected house for about 8 months. Then we went to another protected house. We never separated. We always kept together. I had a strong mother. Yeah, no food, hunger. What food we had? Well, we had eggs, bread, mostly bread. We used to put our finger into the wall, and the wall had some kind of material. I remember as a kid, you know, to eat that for the food. We were very lucky because we had a, building. There was a high-ranking doctor, Dr. Shashonyi, who was a high-ranking officer in the Hungarian army, and we were supposed to be deported. They typed up the name of the people who were going to be deported. He pulled our names out, so we were able to not to be deported.
If you have a legal job, you earn enough in a month to eat one day. Consequently, everybody did something illegal to survive, which gives the government an upper hand. They know that everybody's doing something illegal, so they can arrest you anytime they want. If my mother managed to get her hands on an egg, she would grind the shell to a fine powder, because God forbid somebody should see the shell in our garbage. That meant we had an egg, and an egg you can't afford legally. So that means we did something criminal. After about 1.5 years, we could travel, so we went to Uzbekistan. My father made shoes, and my mother sold them on the black market. That's how we ate. I had jobs. I had to carry the water. There's no running water. I had to carry buckets. There were kids that would throw stones at me. I had to learn how to fight. Our main entertainment was playing war. I was pretty much on my own. My parents were just involved in survival.
My grandfather, who was on the underground, 2 weeks before the Russian liberation, they caught him and they shot him in the Danube. The way they shot people to save bullets, they tied them up and they put their hands together and they shoot one, and the rest was pulled into the Danube. And if you ever go to Budapest, you see the shoes on the Danube, because they all had to take their shoes off. My grandfather was taken to Auschwitz, my uncle was taken to Auschwitz, and my other grandfather was a very influential man, was able to get my uncle to get out of Auschwitz. But he refused because he wouldn't want to ride on Shabbos, and he perished. My father was very lucky. He was in a labor camp, and my grandfather sent 2 Jewish fellows dressed up as Nazis and said, I want Mr. Lindenblatt, I want him, the Nazis. My father got scared. What are they going to take him? And later on, when they get far away from the camp, he said, "We Jews, we come to get you to see your children."
Now they have to hide us. My mother, she will pretend to be the wife of the cousin. My brother has to take care of the small animals. I didn't know any Polish. I only knew Yiddish. So they had to hide me. And they hid me in all kinds of places. In the attic of the house. I had to be very, very quiet because the farmhands would come and go all the time into the house. And if somebody heard something and reported it, they would come and kill us. They would store potatoes in a big, 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 deep, deep hole inside the ground. And then dig another hole inside that hole and covered it up with planks and covered the planks with potatoes. And we would crawl inside that second hole. It was a mess with little creatures crawling around, and that's where we would hide. We stayed that way for over a year, and finally we were liberated by the Russians.
We were going by train to the Tyrol Mountains. The train was stuffed with people, and we didn't know that time. They were taking us there to eliminate us completely. Every few cars, they had a platform with machine guns. Then American planes flew by to see what kind of train this is. The Germans opened fire from the machine guns that was on the train and started shooting at the American soldiers. Pilots were able to disable the locomotives, and they couldn't take us any further. The guard of the train of the German ran away. When they broke the doors open and jumped out, I fell on the stack of hay that was near. Bullets, pieces of fire all around me. American pilots, they were responsible for saving thousands of people, but they also shot a few hundred Jews that were on the train. But they stopped the whole train, and that's how the whole train was saved.
I was in a farm, and then we heard the sound of the cannons. We didn't know exactly what it was, and then all of a sudden, the American army passed through.
This bulletin has come to you from the NBC newsroom in New York. The German news agency Transocean said today in a broadcast that the Allied invasion had begun.
Early Tuesday morning, numerous landing craft and light warships were observed in the area between the mouth of the Somme and the eastern coast of Normandy. At the same time, paratroops were dropped from numerous aircraft on the northern tip of the Normandy Peninsula.
This means invasion.
That was wonderful to see the American soldiers. They gave us all the chocolate bar and the chewing gum, all the goodies.
The Russians came in, and they came in on horses, and they gave us bread, dark bread like the night, and they lifted us up, and we were free. I was very happy. I didn't have to wear the Star of David. I can eat, I had food. The Russians were very good to us. We were able to go back to school, go back to our own apartment.
We stayed hidden for several days when the war was over because we didn't know and we didn't trust anything until there were Russian soldiers there. We didn't want to stay there. So we got out of there very quickly and we smuggled across the border into the American zone of Germany, where we were declared displaced persons. We ended up in called a DP camp, where we were supported by the Americans. We were not reunited with anybody because everybody was dead. When the killers came on that Friday of September 26, 1941, they killed 61 members of my extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. We're the only family that survived. There were a certain number of entry permits to the United States from Truman, especially for people who had relatives in the United States. My father had a brother in the United States, so we were one of the lucky few. I came to the United States in 1949.
After the war, we went back to Poland. All their property was leveled. There was no sign that there had ever been a house there. And one of the neighbors said to my mother, when the Germans came, your father proudly stood in his doorway and he said, I'm not going, this is my home. Of course, they shot him right on the spot in front of the whole family. The Christian Polish people were very impressed. They said he was very brave and he died like a man. Nobody wanted to stay in the hometown that they came from because there were no Jews left and it was actually dangerous. The Poles did not want the Jews back. And this time my father had the right idea. He said, if we don't leave now, we'll never leave. Poland is going to become a communist country, which it did. So we went to Sweden. That was a whole new country. I had to learn a new language. I went to school there. I loved it. It was one of the two countries in all of Europe that hadn't been in the war. Switzerland was the other, but Switzerland wasn't letting anybody in. But my parents did not want to stay in Europe anymore. We waited in Sweden until his brother, who lived in Brooklyn, arranged for us to come here legally.
The DP camp was called Feldafing, and from all over people came to this displaced camp. The 15 boys that were together from Łódź, we held together the whole time, and we all remained alive. The British had a Jewish brigade, mostly formed by the Palestinian Jews. They sent a truck and took us to Israel. The truck started moving, and somebody pulled me off the truck. You know who pulled me off the truck? My wife. So I wound up not going to Israel, I wound up going to America. My friend's husband, my marriage, my uncle, had relatives in America. They found out I was in Germany, so they sent me papers.
We came back to Paris. My parents had lost the apartment, so we moved to a different apartment. My cousin, who was an American soldier, he came in and knocked on the door and made the paperwork for us to come to the United States.
1946 came the law that whoever doesn't want to be a citizen of Russia could go back. So we went back. We came to Poland, Szczecin, and we went to Germany, Berlin. We were displaced persons, so they gave us a big house in Berlin. My mother was pregnant with twins, so they took us to Babenhausen. United States were already coming in and bringing in stuff from the Red Cross. They called it care packages. Every family got one room. The Jewish people got together and formed a Jewish school, and they call it Bes Yankov. They taught us how to speak a little English. My father was 12 years old when his mother died. But he remembers that she has 7 siblings in America. So we send away 7 letters to the United States that a family of 5 wants to come to the United States, but we need a sponsor. So we got 7 letters back saying that one person, the name of Lefton, they will sponsor us. But a friend of my father's wrote us a letter saying that he's very poor and he wouldn't be able to sponsor us. So the Hayas took over. It took us 3 years to come to the United States.
But in 1952, they nationalized all the stores. That means no private business. Everything belongs to the government. He was the dairy business. I had a bicycle with a little box in the back of it, and I used to schlep the merchandise from here to there. When the government came in to take the business, I said, I want that bike. He says, no, that bike belongs to the People's Republic of Hungary. Does not belong to you anymore. And then later on, when I became high school agent. Then I went to the only Jewish high school in the communist world. I was there from 1945 to 1956 under the communists.
SS Marine Marlin, that was the name of the transport ship.
A freighter called Topa Topa, and I was seasick for 7 days.
We went through a storm, the English Channel. Everybody was throwing up, very hard trip.
The captain of the boat was General Grayley, and we came on Pier 57.
My first sight, the traffic lights from the cars on the highway all night long.
My idea of America was I just went to school. They weren't ready for me. I was one of the first ones that came over. So they put me in 4th grade high school. I didn't know how to count 1 and 1. The second language I knew was French. I didn't know any English. That was my experience. That's how I remember America. How many children do I have? 3.
I came to the United States when I was 14. We lived in the Bronx. I started to go to school. I went to junior high school. And after junior high school, I was going into a vocational high school to learn the trade. I wanted to be a beautician, but I became a designer. So I made my own dress. My uncle said that he has a nice fella for me. And the fella that he has for me is learning how to be a butcher. And I figured with my head that my father is a butcher, and I'll marry a butcher, so they'll be in business together. I have 2 sons, and I have 4 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren.
My mother, just 2 sisters in Brooklyn. I went to one sister, my father, my mother, and my sister went to the other sister. So we were separated until my father found an apartment so we all could move together in Williamsburg. My first job was in a costume jewelry on 5th Avenue in New York. Then my second job was with my father nailing rabbit skins. Then at a third job, I was pressing ladies' coat with a vapor machine. And the Korean War started. I enlisted in the Air Force. I went to school to become a control tower operator, the control of air traffic, giving landing and takeoff instruction. I was stationed in England, French Morocco, Casablanca, and then I was transferred to San Francisco. I was there for 4 years. Then I was discharged and went back to Brooklyn. I was learning air conditioning and refrigeration, heating and cooling. I went to Fairleigh Dickinson University to get a degree. It took me 8 years, and I graduated as an engineer. I worked for a hospital for Mount Sinai for 20 years as an engineer. I have 3 children. I have 2 daughters and a son. I have grandchildren.
Have you heard of the Hyatt organization, Hebrew Immigrant Association? They're the one who brought me to this country on airplane by myself in 1960. I went to Williamsburg among the Hasidim. I lived there for a while, then I went to Hebrew college. Then I worked at the Copacabana. I was a waiter. I played water polo, and then I became a water polo player. I played all over the world. I got married in 1967. I have 3 girls. I have 5 grandchildren.
When he came to Brooklyn, my father tried to get a job, and there were a lot of returning GIs waiting in line to get jobs. And they kept saying, "Pop, go to the end of the line." And finally he gave up, and he bought a laundromat. Across the street from them was a fish store, and they had a son, and they were looking for a bride for their son, and they decided I would probably be the perfect bride. I was still a sophomore in high school. So that's how I met my first husband. My second husband was very nice. And I had a third husband who was also very nice. I gave birth to 3 children, but with the succeeding husbands, I inherited 3 more.
We arrived in the United States, and then I went to school, and I Ended up living most of my life in Oregon. I met my wife on the first Seder night, Monday evening, and Friday morning we were engaged to be married. And we were married 12 days later on Rosh Chodesh. We have 3 children and 11 grandchildren.
People who survived the Holocaust and with Emunah prospered so much after the war.
We had an Emunah session with Rabbi C, and he taught us about how most Jews lost faith in Hashem, but some Jews still kept that faith and they survived through the Holocaust because of that faith.
We gave a story about a man who, even though he was about to go into the gas chamber, he was still praying, and they were about to close the gas chambers and there was too many people. So they took out some people and he happened to be one of them, and that was so inspirational.
Don't give up hope. We know it's going to be good. We know Hashem is watching us, Hashem is protecting us, and that is the Emunah that kept the Jews going, and that's the Emunah that keeps us going, knowing in the end Hashem loves us and will take care of us.
Mr. Lindenblatt's uncle, who refused to leave because of Shabbos, is the definition of having Emunah on Hashem, because even though he had the chance to leave, he knew that whatever Hashem wants to happen is going to happen, and he's not going to break Shabbos for that. I was inspired by that to keep on having faith in Hashem, because even though there's tough times, you should just keep on pushing through and know that everything happens for a reason.
Never forget and protect Israel with all your might.
That you remember, stay Jewish. Keep up your Jewishness. Don't be afraid. Speak up. Stand up for your value.
To be aware of what's going on in the world, you have to know who to vote for.
People should know about the Holocaust so it doesn't happen again.
To be successful, educated, and be married and have children and be happy.
One has to be optimistic. If you don't understand that there is good in the world, then it's very hard to keep going.
Even if you think it's like not gonna work out, it's gonna work out. Everything is for the good.
Something I learned and took away from this was being so appreciated for the life I have. I got to go to a Jewish school and have Jewish education and not be scared of being Jewish.
I really would see the Holocaust as more of a story, but now I see it more personally, with someone else's point of view. I think the Holocaust teaches us now that we should appreciate everything we have.
Your generation is lucky to be born in the United States. It should be peace in the world, and I don't like what's happening now.
Israel is everything to me. It must exist. Being Jewish was never ever safe until Israel came into existence.
They try to deny it. I'm here to prove it. I'm not for long. I don't know how much Shemesh Burach give with me, but very few of us left, and then it's history.
People who don't learn from their history are doomed to repeat their history.
To hate someone doesn't take much. Hitler was only one person that started the movement, and everybody went along.
Don't let bad things happen without saying something.
The Holocaust was a crime against humanity. There's always a Hitler once in a while that comes to the surface, and you have to be very careful.
Never, never, never again.
If you could speak to your parents today, what would you say?
Thank you. You saved my life.
Thank you, Mr. Engelson, for coming to ASHAR and sharing your story today.
Thank you, Mr. Lindenblatt, for giving me a story to share with other people so survivors aren't forgotten.
Thank you, Mrs. Konigsberg, for making us appreciate the food we have to eat, because in Russia she didn't get any food.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Kahan, for coming here and telling us your story.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig, for letting us into your home and letting us interview you.
Thank you, Mrs. Edelstein, for teaching me stuff that I never knew about the Holocaust, and you really explained it to me with happiness, and that really calmed me down, and it was a very good thing that I liked about you.